Morning. Got Razmik on, Alan, Jeff. Good morning, guys. Got a good show today. Will is joining us. Will Parker, coin number 800 up in Montana. Dallas is on. My beautiful bride is on. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you out there, but especially Miss Lisa. Okay, we got a full show today, so it's okay with you guys. I'm not going to beat around the bush too much. We're going to get right on into it. We got 9 folks on. That's enough for me to start Coffee with Rich. Hello and welcome to a special episode of Coffee with Rich. A lot of you guys maybe not know this, but I spent a lot of time in the Red Cross when I retired from the Marine Corps. I thought that was going to be my new chapter of my life, emergency management, disaster relief operations. It about killed me. It is not for the faint of heart, and we'll talk a lot about the lessons learned there. But can somebody give me a sound check real quick? Let me know if the sound is working. And then we will kick it. If you can hear me okay, let me know, and we will run through this stuff. Oh, I got 10 by 10. All right. Okay. So, like I said, if you're just joining me, this is your first time to Coffee with Rich. Just want to let you know that my name is Rich Brown, co-host of the American Warrior Show, co-founder of the American Warrior Society, retired Marine Corps officer, former cop, former special operations guy with the Sheriff's Department, former corrections officer, and regional manager for disaster preparedness and government operations. And I manage the lovely state of Tennessee here. Oh, my buddy Jesse Ross is on. Good morning, Jesse. So, what we're going to talk about today is 5 years ago on Valentine's Day, me and my lovely bride and 2 of our very good friends, we went out for a wonderful dinner together. And the weather report was screaming that ice was coming. Okay, we've heard this stuff before. Well, throughout the night, the ice did come, and we had more than, like I think, 1.5 inches of ice on everything. And it led to a disaster. 31 people died up here in Tennessee during the disaster. It was called Disaster Relief Operation 563, so DRO 563. And I went to work immediately and didn't get off work for 24 days. 24 days straight, 16, 18 hours a day, some days without sleep, as the Assistant Disaster Director of DRO 563. And I wrote an article about it, which is a lovely segue for me, because our article of the day, because you know with Coffee with Rich, I always talk to you about an article you need to check out. I'm going to always tell you about a show you need to listen to, and then we're going to talk about a gadget. So the article is going to be Disaster Preparedness List and Considerations, and it's a brand new article I put together for you, and that's going to be the subject of today's discussion. And if you want a deeper dive into the DRO 563, I did a 3-part series, Surviving DRO 563. All these articles are available for you on the American Warrior Show. I'm sorry, on the AmericanWarriorSociety.com. They're absolutely free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a 3-part series. Then check that out. American Warrior Society swag, man. I'm rocking this new hoodie and I absolutely love it. It is perfect. The sizing worked out great. Remember, everything you buy on the American Warrior Society.com or AmericanWarriorShow.com are print on demand. So when you ask for it, we're going to build it and send it to you. So give us about a week or two before you start sending hate mail. It is coming. Okay. The show you might want to check out is shows number 95 and 97, Disaster Preparedness 101, Parts 1 and 2. And again, you can find those on AmericanWarriorShow.com, episodes 95 and 97. Before I go any further, let's see who's on here this morning. Oh, pal, Mr. Mike Seeklander is on. Jim is on. Good morning, Jim. My brother Jeff Brown is on. My daughter Maggie is on. And once again, happy Valentine's Day. And like I said, I've got a kind of a long show for you this morning, so I'm not going to dilly-dally. We're going to get right into it. So the subject is disaster preparedness, planning and considerations. And the gadget this morning is you. You're the gadget, because I want you to start thinking about some of the things I'm going to discuss here. Number one is don't plan. I want you to prepare. And the reason I say that is sometimes preparing pigeonholes the thinking. I remember watching the Doomsday Preppers when it was a show on the History Channel or one of those shows. They used to talk about history and important subjects. Now they all make cars. I don't know what happened, but they would say, this is the Doomsday Prepper, Ralph. And Ralph is preparing for an EMP and the loss of the grid. Okay, cool. And this over here is Carl. And Carl is preparing for a hurricane. Well, that's cool. But again, if you're only considering a hurricane, you're going to miss out on all the other disasters that are associated with that. So, something to think about. If you know somebody that might be interested in this content, please like and share, comment. That's how people find this show and what Mike and I are doing with the American Warrior Society. So let's take a break. I'm going to sip my coffee, hit the share button, and share this with you on your page or somewhere it needs to be shared. By the way, I'm drinking out of my Ferrari coffee cup. We got this in Rome last spring. Okay, hopefully everybody had a chance to share and like and all that good stuff. So we talk about don't plan, prepare. That's the first thing I'm going to tell you. And because like I said, sometimes it pigeonholes your thinking. If you're just generally preparing, it opens your mind to all the endless possibilities of things that could hurt you. But sometimes being prepared also means getting out of the path of the storm. Unless you have a role to play in the storm, there's no need to keep your family in it. So think about that. When it comes to preparing, the tool that you can use to prepare is something we call a SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And there's actual matrix that goes along with this. And you can find this. I actually give you a copy of the matrix to use, the planning matrix, inside the article this morning, which is Disaster Preparedness Planning on the AmericanWarriorSociety.com. The SWOT analysis will help you focus your planning, and then later, well, it'll help you focus your preparing and later your planning. And I want you to do the SWOT analysis in the blue sky environment, which means the sun is shining, it's not raining, there's no disaster, there's no stress. You sit down with your SWOT analysis and a good cup of coffee, and you go through it. What are the strengths I possess? What are the weaknesses? Where are there opportunities? Where are there threats? And do that. And I will tell you that when it comes to conducting a SWOT analysis, think about what kills people in a disaster. And I will tell you from my own experience, like I said, we had 31 fatalities when I was a disaster relief director, and I take each one of them personally. You know, what could I have done on the preparedness side of the house when I ran the preparedness for the state of Tennessee? What could I have done differently to prevent some of those deaths? And I'm going to tell you, here's what killed people. Number one was hypothermia. People would stay inside their homes or their trailers when they lost power, and they would bundle up, and it wasn't enough. And they would be found dead by their family or friends. Carbon monoxide poisoning killed a lot of people during this disaster relief operation I worked. They would, their neighbor might get their generator stolen during the power outage that lasted, in some cases, for weeks. They would pull it inside the garage, or they would put it too close to the house, and the carbon monoxide would kill them. Lack of medical care. We had people that died because they couldn't get to dialysis. They might have lived on a country road. Maybe nobody knew they were back there. There was a whole lot of medical-related issues. These people were already in really bad shape, and when ambulances and other care providers couldn't get to them, it proved fatal. And finally, the fourth thing that killed people were people out on the road, man. People out on icy roads, when we would tell them stay inside. You know, we cannot, EMS services are really taxed to the limit. We cannot deal with you. Don't get out on the road right now. It's going to get you killed. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you look at what kills people in a disaster, none of these people starved to death. None of these people died because of lack of food. None of these people died because of lack of water. None of these people died because they didn't have clean clothes on or didn't have enough sleep. But not having adequate warmth will kill you. Driving on icy roads will kill you. So, SWOT analysis. And again, if you're just joining me, make sure to like and share. Today we're talking about disaster preparedness, planning, and considerations. I'm giving you some thoughts from a disaster relief operation that I was the assistant director of. And here we go. The next thing I want you to do after you've done your SWOT analysis, I want you to think about these enabling conditions. Now, a lot of people seem to think for some reason that when the disaster comes, they're going to be stronger, fitter, better looking, etc. That is not going to happen, folks. There's three big enabling considerations I want you to consider. Number one, most important thing is the thing that's going to go through this disaster is you. So your own physical fitness is going to be your biggest asset in disaster. It's not going to be the gadget. It's not going to be the food you have stored. You're far more likely to die of heart disease or cancer or obesity than you are a disaster. So creating and maintaining a good level of physical fitness is number one, and has to be. The second thing is going to be firearms, defensive tools, survival training, etc. It's not just I've got some guns in a gun safe, I'm good to go. Do you know how to use them? Can you harvest game with those, wildlife? Do you have enough ammunition preloaded in magazines to handle the fight? I will tell you, I talk about this in the show. During the disaster, our road was blocked off and nobody could get on it for at least 3 days because it's just the heavy volume of trees. When you've got an inch and a half of ice on every single limb, twig, and branch, it looked like a war zone. I mean, all the trees were broken, fell across the road, power lines across the road. Nobody could get off. But then that meant that some nefarious characters were able to roam and steal at will. So think about that. One night they come rolling down the road, and you know, I didn't have a lot of magazines prepped. I think I might have had 2 mags prepped, and I'm like, oh man, this is not enough. And the third and final thing for your enabling conditions are coalitions. A lot of people think of, I'm gonna bug out, bro, when the bad thing happens. Where are you gonna go? And we'll talk more about that later, but I want you to plan. Number one, probably the first thing when you do your preparedness is plan to bug in, man. Shelter in place, and we'll talk more about that in a second. So sheltering in place and bugging in, man, means that you need to know what your neighbors, what value they can bring to the situation, and more importantly, what value that you can bring to the situation. So coalition. So those are your 3 big enabling conditions: your physical fitness, your firearms, defensive skills, and then lastly, coalitions. Let's see who's on this morning. Jill says it's freezing rain is a problem in Oregon. Yeah. Mike Seaclatter says ice sucks. Yeah. Ian, good morning from Nashville. Good morning, sir. Razmik is on. Let's see here. Lots of folks on. David's on this morning. Good to see you guys. Okay, I mentioned staying put, shelter in place. During the first night of the ice storm, my plan was kind of shelter in place, and then I got a phone call from a shelter saying, Rich, we got to get a resupply right now. We're running out of cots, blankets, and fuel. I've called everybody, and I can't get nobody. We're trying to get shelter operators in, but they're having the same problem you are. They can't get off your road. So me and my son decided we're going to get out. I had the keys, the only keys, single point of failure, to get into this one room and get all the disaster relief supplies out, and I couldn't get off the road. There was power lines, some energized, some not energized across our road. All three ways of getting off the road were blocked. Could not get off the road. So I said, hey, I give you permission to kick the freaking door in, take what you need, and we'll figure it out later. Later on that same night, man, there was a semi-truck turned over, resulting in over 675 cars being backed up. 12-mile stretch of Interstate 40 were stranded. All we could do was send out the National Guard and Humvees to do welfare checks on folks, giving out some donated blankets and maybe a hot cup of coffee. But again, like I said, it's not worth your family's life, man. Stay in. There's no reason in the world to get out there on the roads when it's like that. All you're going to do is take up valuable assets. Another thing when it comes to staying in places, if you've prepared your place and you've prepared yourself and you've prepared your kit, you're right where you need to be. If you get out on the road, you're going to tie up EMS assets. If you think I'm going to go down to Walmart and pick up what I need, it's too late. We had my particular Walmart here in Crossville, Tennessee, when the power went out. I don't know if it was the first night or the second, but when the generator failed and they had to actually close the doors, people said, I need my stuff, and they kicked in, broke the glass, went in, and I took some photographs of the looted Walmart. If you haven't seen one, it is pretty eye-opening, so I would encourage you to, again, read the 3-part series I did, Surviving DRO 563. If you have to get out, and I would encourage you to have some prefabricated boards that you can batter up, close up your windows and doors. And they make these really cool screws, torque screws, so that somebody with a Phillips head screwdriver can't just come around and take it off. I mean, you actually have to have a key, basically, to get in there. So think about that. I tell you what you don't want to do. If you get out on the road and you say, Rich, I hear you. I heard you talk about shelter in place, bro. Can't do it. I got to get out, man. Me and my family got to get out. There's wildfires coming, whatever. You have to leave. Understand that you may be vectored into a shelter pretty much against your will. It absolutely can happen. And the shelters, for me, are a last resort, because while you will find warmth, you will find food there, you will find psychological aid, you'll probably find physical aid. We're going to have nurses there to take care of you. If they can't always maintain familial integrity, that means your family may be busted up. Sometimes men sleep on one side, women sleep on the other side. If you're able-bodied, you're going to be put to work helping clean and run the shelter. When I was a disaster relief director, we had a really horrific norovirus outbreak in one of our shelters, and it just tied up all the nurses and the staff that we had dealing with it. It was really brutal. So as for me, man, going into a shelter is a last resort. The other part of it you're going to see is a lot of people with physical and intellectual disabilities that are coming into the shelter, and it just makes a really unpleasant environment. Once again, like and share. We're fixing to get into the actual list itself of things that you need. So like and share. I'll take a break real quick, see who's on here. Okay. Greg is on. Ian number 1147. Mark is on. Kick the door in. We'll deal with it later. Perfect example of adapt, improvise, and overcome. Yeah, man. Yeah, I didn't call and ask anybody for permission. I said do it. I'll take the hit later. But people got what they needed, and that's the most important thing. All right, here we go. The number one thing is going to be water when it comes to this list. If your pipes freeze and bust, you're going to have to know how to cut off water to your home. If there's an issue with gas, you need to know how to cut off the gas to your home. This is not the time to call the plumber. You have to know how to do this stuff yourself. The other thing is you should probably know how to do some quick, simple patches with a few sticks of PVC, maybe some couplers and cement cleaner and stuff like this. So having those on hand already is a good idea. Making sure your pipes are insulated before the disaster strikes so that you can keep that water coming. But we've talked about before, a lot of times the water system gets compromised. This isn't on my notes, but I will tell you, I had a mayor call me, and I could tell she was talking real quiet, whispering, her voice was quivering. I'm like, you know, ma'am, what can I do for you? She said, I need water. I said, I understand that. We got some water coming. I'll put you on the list. She's like, no, we need it like now, because I don't know if you know this, you see those big tanks of water and the water sits at the top. There's a generator, there's a power supply that pumps the water to the top of the tank, and then gravity feeds it to your home. But when the power's out, they kick on a generator to get the water to the top. And she's like, our generator's not working. I can't get the water to the top of the tower. So when the water comes down, we're done. And she was scared. So don't be in that position. If you're fearful of the water supply being compromised, then I would encourage you to fill up your bathtubs. You can always use that to flush toilets with. You can use it to drink. You can use it to feed, water your animals, etc. So another thing is, if you have a pond, stream, like here on our 14 acres, we have a pond. I can use that pond as a water supply, but only if I have the means to filter it and drink it. And like we talked about last week, if you have bleach, 8 drops to a gallon of bleach, once you remove the sediment, of course, and it can't be scented, can't be splash proof, but bleach is something easy. You probably got at home, and you can go ahead and disinfect that water. If you got a Sawyer squeeze, a live straw, those are great. The only problem with a Sawyer squeeze is if you let it be full of a little bit of water and it gets frozen, it can break apart the ceramic that's inside those filters, and you would never know it, but your water would be compromised. So this is something to consider. If you have pack animals outside, like during the ice storm, we had horses, and when the power went out, the trough heater was gone, and I had no way to keep the water in the trough for the horses from freezing. So we had to carry out warm water and keep that going. But there's a simpler thing that I learned about later. You can take like a 2-liter bottle full of water, make a really heavy salt solution, put the lid on and let that float around, and because the salt water won't freeze, it will keep the trough taken care of. So little tip there. When you think about water, the USDA or FDA recommends that you have 1 gallon per person per day that you're planning for. So if you're planning and preparing, says that I want to have enough water for 5 days and there are 5 people in my house, I need 5 gallons times 5, 25 gallons of water minimum. And again, don't forget your pets. If you have pets, remember it's about 1 ounce per pound of body weight for your pets. Another thing, if a medical emergency arises, your water needs are going to increase. If you are in a warm weather disaster, your water needs are going to increase. If you have elderly folks, etc., anything like that can change the dynamic quickly. And I will tell you too that if you have bottled water, man, although a lot of states require the bottlers of that water to put an expiration date on it, it actually does not go bad per se, so you can keep that stuff for years and years and years, well past the date. Now, when you take the lid off, it may smell like plastic, but that's okay. It's not gonna harm the water. Okay, let's keep rolling, man. The next thing is artificial climate. This is a consideration a lot of people don't think about. You're gonna need supplemental heating or supplemental cooling depending on where you are. And I would highly encourage you to get a generator if you don't already have one, because it's one of the things that I wished I had, and as soon as the disaster was over, I ran out and bought 2 of them. And I've got huge generators that one supplies power to my father's home, which he lives next door to us. One supplies powers to my home. We've got a checklist on how to power up the generator and reroute the power back into the house. And then probably about once a month, my son and I will take out the checklist and we'll actually crank it up and make sure everything's running correctly. If you have your supplemental heat plan is for kerosene, make sure you got plenty, because kerosene's going to run out quick. Propane's going to run out quick. You might have to travel, like I did, hours away from the affected area to get kerosene and propane, so something to consider. Before I go any further, let's take a share break. Like, share, comment, guys. If we go, I don't know what the magic number is. If we get 60 this morning, I will send somebody something. I know we've been on here 27 minutes. This is going to be a little long today. If you got to catch it up later, that's fine. All right. Power. Power is, like I said, a generator is incredibly important. Don't think you're going to go get a generator when you need it. Generators were gone like that at the Lowe's and every other place that was selling them around here. So what happened was they would say, we got a generator coming from Atlanta, Georgia, truckload of generators coming from Atlanta. They'll be here at 6 o'clock tonight. So people waited in the parking lot. The parking lots of Lowe's were absolutely full. Men walking around with guns, fights breaking out. It was not a pretty picture, because they would leave someone to wait in line and the rest of the family would sit in the car. And then they would switch out like that, and that could cause problems. So power is incredibly important. These, if you think about your smartphones and all this other kind of stuff, imagine the power demand that you're going to need, and you should incorporate this in your own SWOT analysis. Another thing is, if you're going to get a generator, make sure you have the means to secure it. I will tell you, when the power went out and nobody could get off the road, it was an eerie silence in the community, and all you could hear were generators running. So make sure you have a means to secure those generators. Communication, man. Communication is critical. And your smartphones, I think we over-rely on them a lot. They're amazing, of course, to monitor the news, monitor the weather, communicate with family and friends, keep abreast of your bank accounts, etc. But you got to have a means to charge those phones. Again, 5 years ago, when the power went out for 4 days, we would have to go in the car, crank up the car, and power up the cell phones, because your old pal Rich Brown didn't have generators back then, but now we do. Maybe you want a handheld, a little crank or solar radio, a weather radio. Those are phenomenal ideas. You can get those for about $50. With your smartphones, once you got them powered up, Red Cross offers some amazing apps that will keep you safe. So check out those apps. And another thing I will tell you when it comes to communicating is, communicating with the outside world is sometimes something that you need to have available information. One of the things we have here in the state of Tennessee, the Tennessee Department of Transportation has an app where you can go on it and see all the traffic cameras along the major routes, like I-40, I-75. So you can go in there and actually see what the conditions are. Is there a traffic jam there? What do the roads look like? How fast are the trucks going, etc. So intel drives operations, so you have to know that intel. Medical information, exsanguination can kill quickly. That's the loss of blood. That stuff can kill you, which is why you need to have combat bandages, hemostatic agents, tourniquets, etc. And everybody needs to know how to use them. And you need to have an IFAC kit, an individual first aid kit. If you don't have one, you need to build one. And I'm not going to tell you what needs to go in that kit. What I'm going to tell you is there are some really great resources. One of them is the AmericanWarriorSociety.com. We have an entire medical module on first aid medicine in there for you, done by Dr. Dan Olesnicki. Check out the training vault on AmericanWarriorSociety.com for more on that. I think everybody needs to know how to run an AED, an automated emergency defibrillator, to get someone's heart going again. Everybody needs to know CPR in your family. Everybody needs to know the Heimlich maneuver. Very simple things. And you can get all this information by checking out the American Red Cross in your local community and finding out the training that they offer. I think a lot of times people think, I bought the IFAC kit, I went to darkangel.com and bought their TCCC kit and I just throw it in the thing. No, man, you got to train. I would almost rather you be trained than have all the equipment. So think about that. All you're trying to do is keep them safe till you can get them to the emergency room. The other thing is, don't forget the emergency medical needs of your pets. If they're on medication, etc., you need to know that. And on that topic, you need to have all your prescriptions written down that you and your family have, and have those so that you can run out. The other thing I would tell you, eyeglass prescriptions, hearing aid prescriptions, anything like that, special needs for family members, dietary needs, whether they're a diabetic, etc. I would say you need to have a couple months worth of medications stored back just in case. If you have to bug out, make sure you got your family's medical records. Another thing is, if you end up in a shelter, sometimes you can end up in different shelters. There's a really neat thing called the National Emergency Family Registry and Locator System. The American Red Cross runs one as well, which is why you're going to want to have photographs of your loved ones. You want to have and all their vital information so that you can do that family reunification plan. Lots of things to consider there. We're up to 48 live viewers. If you're joining me this morning, we're talking about lessons learned from the Valentine's Day storm of 2015. It was an ice storm that your old buddy Rich Brown was the assistant disaster director of. And unfortunately, we had 31 fatalities, man, and it was not pretty. And these are some of the lessons I learned. And if you're joining me, welcome. Please like, share, and comment. Next, we're going to talk about food. I could easily go down the rabbit hole on food. I am not going to do it. What I'm going to tell you is acidic canned foods will keep about 12 to 18 months. Low acidic canned foods will, like meat and vegetables. Acidic canned food might be stuff like tomatoes. Non-acidic would be like vegetables, meats. Those things will keep for 2 to 5 years in the can. So obviously you're going to want to have that, but you're also going to want to have some high energy portable stuff like protein bars, energy bars, things of that nature. When it comes to food, if you have, like I said, a diabetic family member or someone with allergies or special needs, you're going to have to take care of those folks as well. So I would think that you probably want enough food, a minimum for 5 days to a week, minimum. And then I will tell you, though, that when it comes to food, you don't necessarily need to go nuts, because in our disaster, I think it went on for 24 days that I worked around the clock. We had food pantries set up in all the affected counties. Like the kids weren't going to school, so we just really went in and took over high schools and set up emergency food pantries where people could come in and get food. We communicated with folks that gave us food. One of the main things that we did early on was I requested permission to raid the local schools. You heard me right. Go in with bolt cutters and take what food we needed. And the school board said, yep, that's fine. You can raid our storage of food at our high schools and elementary schools on one condition. You get us a letter from the USDA that says we're going to get the money to restock. So we literally called up the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They said, yeah, we'll write the check and we'll get this stuff taken care of. And we went in and literally took trucks and raided the schools to get food. And then we set it up in food pantries. So that's why I say, if you have enough food for a week for you and your family, you're probably going to be okay. If the disaster goes on much longer than that, you will probably find yourself at a food pantry. And at those food pantries, we also had like the Tide trucks to wash your clothes and laundry with for people that didn't have power for weeks at a time. The next thing beyond food we're going to talk about is fuel and fire. If you heat your home with wood, that's awesome. But guess what? By having that flame in your house, you also have everything you need to burn your house to the ground. So knowing how to put out a fire and knowing how to start a fire, very important things. So you're going to want to know the different types of fires. You have a Class A fire, Class B fire, Class C, D, and K fire. And with each one of those types of fires is a different fire extinguisher. Now, some will handle like A through C, some only handle K. I'm not a firefighter, but I know enough to know that there are different types of fires, and that I have the fire extinguisher for those types of fires in those places. So think about that. Candles are a must. I will tell you, if you go into Surviving DRO 563 and look at those photographs of a looted Walmart, you will see The candle aisle, gone. The hunting and camping aisle, gone. So the time to have all this stuff is beforehand. And I encourage you to put it all in like one of those plastic tubs. The lights go out, you grab the plastic tub, it's got headlamps in there, it's got chem lights in there, it's got candles in there, it's got everything you need to get light going, to illuminate the area, and to get a little bit of warmth. Battery operated smoke alarms, man, incredibly important. If you have them hardwired into your home, but they don't have a 10-year lithium battery, I would encourage you to get those. They're very important. Another thing is, okay, you went out and you did your SWOT assessment, you determined that the kitchen you're more likely to have, let's say, a Class K fire, a grease fire, so you got the right fire extinguisher, but you don't know how to use it. Well, I'll tell you, the acronym is PASS, pull the pin, aim, squeeze the trigger, and sweep side to side at the base of the fire. So just something to think about there. But again, fuel is incredibly important. If you need propane, get it before the disaster. If you need kerosene, get it before the disaster. I heat my home primarily with a wood burning stove, and I have a big barn stocked full of a couple years worth of wood. So again, make sure you have those things taken care of. Sanitation, and then we'll take a break. Sanitation, man, if you're shut in for long periods of time, your plan is like mine, you're gonna bug in. Sanitation will probably become a concern. This means disinfectant sprays, wipes, all those things become a premium in a disaster. Like I said, we had a horrific norovirus outbreak. You're gonna want to make sure that you are cleaner than you normally are, because you're gonna be in confined spaces with your loved ones, friends and family for an extended period of time. And I'll tell you another thing, when it comes to this, it's not just your friends and family. Because we heated with a wood-burning stove, and because we were able to cook on top of our wood-burning stove and have coffee and some of the creature comforts, people in our neighborhood would come into our home and hang out around the fire, which is great. We'd feed them, take care of them. But they're bringing their viruses in on my family. So again, it's not enough that you got your people taken care of. If your plan is to help others in your community, guess what? They could be bringing their nasty stuff to you. So make sure you have plenty of bleach on hand that you can disinfect with. You're gonna wanna have detergent. You may have to wash clothes in a bucket, wet wipes, all kinds of stuff. So all the additional things you need are gonna be in this article for you on the American Warrior Society, Disaster Preparedness Planning Considerations. Okay, let's take a break here, see who's on. Alan Kelly says, oh, my good friend Scott Bowman is on. Good morning, Scott. Miss Lydia is on. Alan says, planning for whole house generator. Many times on duty, my family had to rely on small generators, and it was not enough. You're absolutely right, man. I got 2 big ones now, and we're all set. Gordon says, good morning. Brett has joined us. Alan says, try to get foods that don't need a whole lot of preparation. And Rich says, good morning. Sorry, I'm late. Glad to have you, Rich. Yeah, I agree with that. You know, one of the things we did, you can, on our wood-burning stove, a big pot of beans. I'm from East Tennessee, I'm a Southerner, we love our beans. Throw the beans in there and forget them, and they'll cook all day long, and you got something. And again, the dried beans can last for a long, long time. Trash bags, Ziploc bags, tarps, etc. You know, trash bags are a premium, and for ways that maybe more than you hadn't thought of. Trash and debris cleanup, you could potentially have stuff all over your yard. They can aid in waterproofing. Tarps in a plastic man are incredible. One of the things that we had was tarp and chainsaw teams. You know, the chainsaw team would come down a road, clearing a path, and then right behind them would be the tarp teams, and these men would go up on top of people's houses and lay out tarps, because a lot of times the roofs had been punctured or destroyed by the winter weather. So having those things so that you can be your own tarp team is incredibly important. And again, as you're doing your cleanup, if you've got wood and you use a wood burning stove, then guess what? You can use that wood for precious BTUs to keep your family warm. But waterproofing in emergency is incredibly important, which is why I highly encourage you to do that. And one of the things that I saw, a friend of mine was in Hurricane Katrina, and he said, man, Rich, we had to bug out. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, I took all the important stuff. We took our computers, put them in a tub. We took our family albums, we put them in a tub, locked them on, and put them at the top of our walk-in closet that was in the center of the house. And guess what? Hurricane Katrina did. Trees fell across his roof. His entire house was destroyed. The waters came and rose, but they didn't touch the tubs. So when they come back, it was a total loss, but their stuff was still in those tubs, high and dry, and I think that was a pretty good idea. Batteries and lights. You're obviously going to want to have a lot of batteries of every variety to power flashlights, headlamps, and other portable devices. Oil lamps can be a source of portable light and a little bit of heat, so that's something to consider. And never forget glow sticks. I will tell you, I have a glow stick forever family. I carry it in my get home bag. 5 glow sticks, and I've got the little rubber bands already prepared on the end of them. Crank operated flashlights, we talked a little bit about that, are very important. So batteries and flashlights, I probably don't have to go into much further than that. Let's talk about clothing and PPE. I know I had you on here about 42 minutes. We're getting toward the end of this list, I do believe. So let's keep pushing ahead. Remember, like, share, comment. We're talking about disaster relief considerations, primarily from a lot of the things I learned working with FEMA, and managing disaster relief operations. Clothing and PPE, man. I see a lot of people running around with flip-flops and stuff like that. You definitely don't want to do that in a disaster. You want to have closed-toed shoes on at a minimum. A great pair of leather boots would be awesome if you can do that. Insulated would be really cool, because there's going to be debris everywhere. There's going to be contaminated water everywhere. One nick on your foot because you didn't wear a closed-toed shoe. Now your mobility is compromised. Now you potentially have an infection from the nasty water that you're going to find yourself in. So think about that. A small clothing repair kit, man, is money in the bank. Make sure that you have plenty of extra buttons and zippers, etc., and a needle and thread, and that should take care of that. Leather gloves, taking care of those hands. Personal protective equipment, whether you lay back a few Tyvek suits to put on to protect you and your family. Face masks, eye protection from puncture wounds, etc. But leather gloves are a must, because what I saw was barbed wire everywhere. I saw this in, not hurricane, but I saw this in tornadoes and stuff like that. There's going to be torn up metal roofing. There's going to be ripped up siding. There's going to be barbed wire. It's a mess. It's a mess, and you're going to need that. When it comes to PPE, you're also going to want some latex or nitrite gloves, depending on whether you have an allergy to that or not. And you're going to want to have sunscreen, man. You're going to be working outside doing a lot of cleanup. You're going to want to have sunscreen, as well as some sunglasses. Ear Pro, if you're going to be running a chainsaw a lot, I would tell you that having electric earmuffs so that you can talk and run a chainsaw at the same time, or maybe shoot and run a chainsaw, shoot and hear at the same time, is incredibly important. So I know they may sound like luxury items, but I would highly encourage you to get them and go beyond just the little foamies. Ponchos, jackets, etc., headgear to keep your head warm. All those clothing and PPE considerations need to be taken care of when you're conducting your SWOT analysis. Keys, computers, passwords, man, this is the way life goes. If you have to end up in a shelter, you're probably going to get access to the computer at some point to communicate with the outside world, let everybody know you're okay. That means you need to know what links you need to go to. You're going to need to know your passwords for all those things if you don't have your computer with you. Having that stuff in crush-proof containers would be a phenomenal idea. Also, again, a battery power source that can keep those things running is going to be incredibly important as well. Like I said, keys to your vehicles, keys to your home. In my get home bag, I've got extra keys to my truck, extra keys to all my locks, extra keys to my doors, and they're right there. Currency. If you got a bug out or the power goes down, guess what ain't working? And cash will be king, my friends. When your credit card can't work because the power is out, if you have cash, you're in charge. That holds true whether you're here or whether you're abroad. There's not a whole lot of problems that $1,000 in cash can't fix. So I encourage you, have some change, have some cash. Don't keep it all in $100 bills, because people can't always break them. So make sure you have some smaller denominations as well. And let's take a break real quick, see who's on here. Oh, Roman is on here. Gerald is on here. Eric, good morning, Eric. Alan, waterproof boots and muck boots. Yeah, man. Having those waterproof boots is incredibly important. I can't say enough about that. I mean, if you don't have a good set of gloves, a good set of boots, you're in trouble. All right, let's talk about maps and GPS. Is a good GPS, a small compass, and a map are a must. During the disaster, we had to send out disaster assessment teams to really get an idea of what was the scope of the damage that we were looking at. And we flew these disaster assessment teams in from all across the country, so they were very unfamiliar with the hills of East Tennessee. And we didn't have enough GPS to cover, because we're talking about 6 counties were affected. We're talking about a large area. It wasn't like a tornado went through a trailer park, man. We had a huge area. So one of the things I did, my lovely bride, Miss Lisa, communicated with the Chamber of Commerce and all the affected areas, and we were able to get them to supply us maps. And we took those maps and gave them to our disaster assessment teams, and we were able to keep moving. When it comes to maps and GPSs, I would encourage you to have pre-selected evacuation routes and link-up points for family and loved ones along the way. One of the things with that is, don't plan, well, I'm going to jump on 40 and head south or head west. Okay, cool. Have you thought about that? Maybe it'd be better to take Interstate 70 and avoid 40 altogether. That's the road that runs parallel to 40. Most major interstates are like that. There's the old path and then the new interstate path. So again, something to think about. Camping gear bedding, man. If you have to bed down somewhere other than your house, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole with this. What I will say is sleeping blankets, thermal blankets, camping-related items to handle roadside sanitation, incredibly important. Cooking and eating on the road, how are you going to do that? Those can be money in the bank. And if you have little ones, man, make sure you have stuffed animals, pack of crayons, a deck of playing cards. I carry that in my get-home bag because it's just a good way to keep yourself occupied in a disaster, man. So, let's see here. John is on this morning from Arizona. Miss Betty. Good morning, Miss Betty. Good to see you. Poncho liners, Mark says, yeah, poncho liners, man, are money in the bank, especially when it comes to you're bugging out and you need to stay warm on the road. So talk about your vehicle. Vehicle should never be driven home with less than 3/4 of a tank of gas. That's just a must. And when you bring your vehicle home, I always back in. It's a little thing I learned as a police officer. Back in your vehicle. Yeah, that way you can get out quickly if you need to. Don't park under trees is another good one. If you got an ice storm heading inbound, if you got winter weather coming inbound, do yourself a favor. Don't park underneath the trees. We had this happen to us, and as the trees began to break from the ice, they started falling on our cars. Not good at all. Another thing you're going to want to do is, you remember your wheels, your wheels. Your car is your main source of mobility, and it must be well maintained. Have fully inflated spare tire, tools to change it. I'm reading off my notes here. Jumper cables, road flares, tire plug kit, can affix a flat, 12-volt tire pump, power inverter, pack of backup fuses, a means for siphoning, and at least a gallon of antifreeze and windshield wiper fluid, can of brake fluid, tire chains, transmission, or hydraulic fluid. There's a whole lot to this list. I'm not going to keep reading it. Here's what I want you to do. Check out disaster preparedness planning considerations on AmericanWarSider.com. One of the things that I carry in my vehicle is the means to breach. What is that? What do I mean by that? I carry bolt cutters in there. I carry crowbar in there because I can't carry everything. And there may come a time if things get bad enough that I'm going to have to start acquiring things. And I'll give you an example of this. A friend of, well, not a friend of mine, I met him at a conference or two. And he was a Marine assigned to Marine security duty. And they were in a place that got overrun. I'm not going to say the country. And after they were hunkered down inside the embassy, the foreign military is surrounding them. They run out of food, but they haven't been taken captive yet. And he said at some point the ambassador said, look, we're out of food. We're drinking the pool water. I need you Marines to fix this. So they put on civilian clothes, and at night they went out and raided local convenience stores and stuff like that to bring back food to the embassy. So you may find yourself in a similar situation. I pray to God not, but you never know. a tow rope or something like that also in your vehicle. If you have a four-wheel drive, you can pull folks out. That's a good idea. If you have I mentioned a siphoning hose. I think those are incredibly important, but I will also tell you that if you haven't siphoned in a long time, the new cars make it incredibly hard to siphon because they have a check valve or a little roller ball. So if the vehicle rolls over, the gas won't spill out on the ground and create another hazard. With that being said, you can't easily siphon from these things. There's a product out there, I think it's called the gas tapper, that if you have to forage for gas on the road, God forbid, how do you do that? Another thing is chainsaws. I never see this listed on any of these survivalist things, but I will tell you, man, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a tornado, whether it's a winter-related disaster, trees and debris are going to be across the road. You're going to need a chainsaw to clear that. If you're going to run a gas-powered one, make sure that you got fuel, oil, extra blades, etc. If you're going to use an electric one, make sure you got a power inverter in your vehicle and power cords. Chainsaw crews were an absolute premium during the disaster. I can't say that enough. Your ability to move, if you have to bug out, if you can't get off the road, you don't have a chainsaw, then you're not going anywhere. Breaching and securing tools, I kind of went into this already. I think this is incredibly important. It needs to be in your go kit, and you need to know how to take care of that. The other thing is securing. I carry some extra locks if I have to lock my stuff up. It's incredibly important that I secure my own things. The last thing we're going to talk about is firearms and knives. You're like, Rich, man, you went all the way down this list. You just now got to firearms and knives. Yeah, absolutely, because it's not the end-all be-all, and I will tell you that you need to consider that handguns are more portable. They weigh less. You can conceal them in a disaster. So a long gun are incredibly important, but also a portable handgun probably is a good idea if you don't already have one. And if you're watching Coffee with Rich, I bet you do. So that pretty much rounds out the list. We talked about conducting a SWOT analysis before you do anything. We talked about some enabling conditions like your own personal physical fitness and health. We talked about firearms. We talked about building coalitions. And then we went into our list of stuff. And I'm going to finish it up with, now that you have listened to everything I had to say, make a kit, develop a plan. That's your final thing you need to do. And we have some great resources for this on the AmericanWarriorSociety.com and our training vault, and we got more coming. Mike and I real soon are going to make some videos, and I'm going to show you everything I have in my truck, everything some of our friends and professionals have in their vehicles. We're going to talk about what we have in our get-home bags. We're going to talk about a whole lot of stuff, how we breach and how we secure things. So you're going to want to check those videos out coming up real soon. That's all I have. Anybody have any questions for me? Let's see. Eric said acquiring things. Yeah, I mean, it's the ugly side of the disaster we don't want to consider, because as defenders, as card-carrying good guys, we don't want to think that we might have to be in that position. But like I said, you can't carry everything. You're going to run out of things. I'm going to barter as much as I can, but eventually I may have to go and do a little scavenging. Hope not. Again, some of you are just now coming in late. You can go back and watch this video at your leisure. It will keep it up. We'll keep it posted here on American Warrior Society's Facebook page. Dallas is great show, quality information. Thanks for everybody coming on this morning. Gosh, I know I kept you on here for almost an hour. I figured it would take about that much to chew through all this content. There's a lot to go over. This is just superficial discussion, some planning considerations for you. If you want to dive deeper, go to AmericanWarriorSociety.com, and we got a 3-part series there for you. Eric says, Rich, would you mind a quick recap of the SWOT analysis? Yeah, man, absolutely. SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's a matrix where you have strengths and weaknesses on the top and opportunities and threats along the side. And if you check out this disaster preparedness planning considerations, I actually have I don't think you can see that. Yeah, I actually have the matrix for you online, or you can Google it. It's SWOT, SWOT analysis. Really good stuff, because what I don't want you to do is, I'm planning, bro. I'm planning for this thing. What are you planning for? I would rather you prepare yourself. I'd rather you prepare your surroundings than just planning for one singular event, because you can't plan for everything. We talk about all hazards preparedness, because that really how you should do it, and conduct your SWOT analysis in what we call the blue sky environment. When nothing bad is happening, we have time to take all the time in the world. And again, this is just skimming the surface, folks. There's a lot more to consider than this, but check out the resources we have for you. Let's see if we have any other comments before I jump off here and let you get on with your Valentine's Day. Make sure you get someone's you love something special. Let's see here. Rasmus says, thank you, Rich. Great stuff. Alan says, key. Hey, survival means being adaptable. Yeah, absolutely, man. Mark, great info as always. John says, got on late but enjoyed what I saw. Thanks, man. Yeah, thank you. All right, folks, listen, have a wonderful Valentine's Day. Remember, 5 years ago, my wife and I and our friends went out for a Valentine's evening. We had no idea that this storm of a century was coming, and we got kind of blindsided by it. Don't be like me. Prepare and plan accordingly. Until then, stay safe.